The following recording is a production of Kickin' Out at 2 in conjunction with the WrestleMania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network and is intended for private use only. For more information, head on over to facebook.com/Kickin' Out at 2 or our Twitter handle @Kickin' Out 2, along with searching Retromania with a W on any and all podcast platforms available to listen to archive shows such as this and all the great content of the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. Evergreen content at your fingertips anytime at your listening pleasure. And with that being said, we thank you for listening and hope you enjoy the show. Spring has arrived here on this episode of Kickin' Out at 2 as we present to you a recap of the WCW Spring Breakout Nitro from March 27th, 2000. We just reached the 25-year anniversary of it just yesterday, as a matter of fact, as we record this today on March the 28th, 2025. I'm going to be recapping that show that I just watched back recently on Peacock. Mind you, for those of you that are paying attention, originally this was scheduled to be a watch-along with Dennis and I, but unfortunately our schedules conflicted, and I couldn't get time to record this with Dennis together, so I thought, well, I'll just watch it and recap it for all of you and save you all the trouble of press and play and watching along with us. So we're going to get to that shortly, but I thought that with it being WrestleMania season, that we would get into some WrestleMania discussion first before we talk about and recap that episode of Nitro from 25 years ago. In the last week or so, the three main talking points of WrestleMania season have been whether Sting is going to be able to induct Lex Luger into the WWE Hall of Fame, the lack of WrestleMania build in WWE programming, and whether the Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Seth Rollins triple threat match should main event night one of WrestleMania instead of the Women's World Championship main eventing night one of WrestleMania. So I'm going to get into all of that shortly, but before we do all of that, head on over to Podbean by searching Retromania with a W. You'll find this show as well as all the great content over at the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. There's evergreen content at your fingertips. Press play anytime. The quality of the content lasts to this day, holds its value. We got plenty of WrestleMania archived content over there between watch-alongs, WrestleMania-themed discussions to get you set for WrestleMania. We will have some WrestleMania content in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be recapping WrestleMania 6, which was voted by all of you in the polls. I'm going to be doing that in the coming weeks, as well as Justin and I are set to record a couple of WrestleMania-themed podcasts that are going to be pretty interesting and very interactive. So I'm going to put it up on the Facebook as well as our Twitter, some discussion points, and we're going to see how that all turns out as we record in the next couple of days or so. So with that being said, head on over to Retromania with a W on Podbean, Facebook.com/Kickin' Out at 2, as well as our Twitter account @Kickin' Out 2. All content over there. I got some WrestleMania pictures. We've been doing some polls. So, head on over there. Be interactive. Be a part of the fun. And I appreciate everything that you guys do for this show here on Kickin' Out at 2. So, let's get into it. Speaking of WrestleMania, let's talk about Sting possibly inducting Lex Luger into the Hall of Fame. It was announced recently that Lex Luger will be going into the WWE Hall of Fame. Very well deserved. There was a nice video that was put up by WWE where Cody Rhodes had surprised Lex Luger in DDP's home, Diamond Dallas Page, while they were doing a DDP yoga session, and announced that he was going to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. I thought that was a nice touch. Luger recently has been working with Diamond Dallas Page and the DDP yoga program to regain mobility and help improve his physical condition from his paralysis over 15, 20 years ago that he had suffered. And so the Hall of Fame induction, with everything that Luger's gone through, is long overdue. And so recently in an interview, Luger had shared his desire for not just one person to induct him, but two. And he had asked for Diamond Dallas Page, who's been very instrumental in helping Luger with his health in more recent memory, and Sting, who is synonymous with Lex Luger throughout his entire career, whether they were allies on screen, whether they were foes, they were real-life best friends behind the scenes. Luger has asked for Sting to be a part of that. Now,
the one roadblock that's preventing Sting from participating in this is his AEW Legends contract that he is under. Sting retired last year from in-ring competition, and he's even scaled back some of his appearances at the Comic-Cons. In fact, this is the last year that he will be appearing at Comic-Cons with the face paint on. So if you're a big Sting fan and you want to go meet the man, the man behind the paint, you better do it in the next, 7 months, 8 months or so, because this is the last year he's going to be doing that. He'll still make appearances, but he just won't be wearing the paint. So Sting, currently under a Legends deal with AEW. He's made a couple appearances, on sale tickets for All In Texas. He was at All In last year, did a run-in for Darby Allin in London. So WWE has allegedly expressed interest in Sting's participation in this Hall of Fame induction. I don't know if they've reached out directly to AEW or Sting, but the rumor is that they have done that. Now, the big discussion point amongst the tribalist AEW and WWE fans has been, why should or shouldn't Sting induct Lex Luger into the WWE Hall of Fame? You got the AEW fanboys out there that are, they're obnoxious. And, Sting shouldn't do this after the way they treated him. And, AEW doesn't have to allow Sting to do this under contract. And why would WWE ask him to they wouldn't allow Luger be a part of his retirement last year in AEW, which is not entirely untrue, which is not entirely true. Luger revealed on the Chris Van Vliet podcast that he was there at the retirement. He just wasn't allowed to appear on camera under his Legends deal. So WWE is asking for Sting to take part in this, and it would require him to appear on camera. However, there's been no word as of this recording whether both sides have met, agreed, disagreed, whatever. But in my opinion, if Luger wants it, I think AEW should allow it. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. If you remember in 2012, Ric Flair went into the WWE Hall of Fame with the rest of the Four Horsemen. He was currently under contract. He was under contract at that time with TNA Wrestling, and TNA Wrestling asked for something in return, and they got Christian to appear at their Slammiversary pay-per-view later that year. I don't know if AEW would ask for something in return, but if you want to get the wheels turning in my head, it would be interesting if WWE were to have allowed, let's say, Cody Rhodes to make an appearance on their programming. Not a wrestling match, not even, just maybe a promo, where he, could come out and thank the fans for, helping jumpstart his career and, the resurgence of his career, I should say, not jumpstart it. That would be pretty neat if there was some sort of on-screen, appearance by Cody Rhodes. Maybe even just sit in front row at an AEW show watching the action and, you get a wave and observe. Or if you really want to get the wheels turning, seeing this is John Cena's last year in wrestling, what if you had John Cena actually have a match against, let's say, like a Kenny Omega or a Will Ospreay on an AEW show? That would really get the wrestling world, their mind would just be blown. Putting this as part of the John Cena farewell tour, especially now that he's turned heel, and his backlash towards the wrestling fans. A lot of his grievances come from fans like AEW fans that are really into the high spot style of wrestling. So it would kind of fit if John Cena were to have made an appearance on AEW programming. Like I said, maybe like a one-off Dynamite or even a match at a pay-per-view against the Kenny Omega. AEW, their tagline is, "This is where the best wrestle." Well, John Cena is the opposite of that. And I think if this were to, and who knows if this is even on the table. I'm just spitballing here. But if this were to have take place, I think this would really, shake up the wrestling world, and really solidify that never say never, anything can happen in wrestling. Tagline that gets overused and overplayed for so many years. But if Luger wants it, I think AEW should allow it. If AEW wants something in return, I think WWE should come to an agreement with them on that. When you think of Luger, you think of Sting. You know, they were tag team partners in WCW. They were allies. They were foes. When you think of Sting, you think of Luger. It's just a natural fit, and I think it would be a nice gesture on AEW's part to allow that to take place. Now, like I said, those fans out there, the AEW, basement bandits, the neckbeards, whatever you want to call them, they feel that, well, WWE didn't allow Luger to appear on camera. Why should AEW allow Sting? We don't know if Luger was even asked to appear on camera for Sting's retirement. I know that Luger was asked to be at the event, and he said he couldn't appear on camera, but they still invited him anyways, and he was in the crowd watching Sting's last match. So I think fans should just stay in their lane, be fans, and enjoy the moment. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, yes, could it be disappointing? Sure, but it's not the end of the world at the same time either. I think I got good faith that WWE and AEW could come to some sort of an agreement. I mean, they did a few years ago with Jericho. When Jericho appeared on Steve Austin's podcast, Tony Khan allowed it. They even, referenced Jericho's time in AEW. So I think it's very possible that we could see something like this happen. I think fans are taking, a situation like this and going from a molehill into a mountain. And it's not necessary. And at the end of the day, it's about what Luger wants. It's his moment. He's going into the Hall of Fame. If he wants his best friend there, it should be allowed. No questions asked. So I think we'll see it. Next, has the WrestleMania build been lacking? Has it not been WrestleMania worthy? I could understand why fans feel it might be lacking, but I think at the same time, this era of fans are not they're not 100% accustomed to WWE's version of storytelling. They're slowing things down for us. They're really taking their time building things. And I think just like today's society, especially with the younger generation, and I hate to say this, I'm 42 years old, but there's a younger generation that wants that instant gratification. They want the results yesterday. And I think WWE is slowing things down to help develop their characters and develop their storylines and to add, more consistency to their storytelling and their programming, that fans are still having a hard time adjusting to that, and especially during a WrestleMania season. I don't know how much more fans want from them in terms of how they're going to build their stories, but I think like they've been on good pace of telling their stories, especially with this Cena Cody thing. I think they're just getting started with this Roman Punk and Rollins thing, which I'll get to in a minute. The Jey Uso Gunther has been pretty consistent, a part of programming. The Charlotte Tiffy program, I think it's not setting the world on fire, but their face-to-face interaction the other night on television really kind of kicked things up. And then, of course, the Women's World Championship with Io Sky and Bianca, and how Rhea has kind of tried to insert herself into it, even though she's out of the WrestleMania picture at the moment. I think it's going as good as we can expect it, realistically. Not everyone's going to be on TV every week. Not everyone's going to be, going to get enough TV time. But I think for what we have, it's been a pretty good build so far for WrestleMania, with just about 4 weeks out till WrestleMania. So I think fans need to just slow it down and try to digest what they're getting and not look for instant gratification so much. I think fans want, like, these matches to be announced, and then they have 3 weeks to be, hurry up and wait. Book the matches, and then you have 3 weeks to get it going for WrestleMania. And that's not realistic. So I do think that we're in a good spot right now. Now let's get to the last discussion point here when it comes to WrestleMania talk, and that's, should the Roman Reigns CM Punk Seth Rollins triple threat match main event night 1? First of all, this match, while I think there is some steam behind it with each individual's, history with each other, I think this is we got nothing for these guys because The Rock's not going to wrestle this year, so we're just going to put all three of them together and make something happen. And I think they're taking chicken shit and turning it into chicken salad, and it's not bad. Could it be better? Absolutely, but there's a lot of meat on the bone with Roman and Seth and with their history together in the Shield, and Seth turning on Roman in 2014, and then Roman becoming this maniacal tribal chief that had ruined Seth's life as well as many others for the course of 4 years. Seth being the one that contributed significantly to Roman losing the title at last year's WrestleMania. And then you have Punk, who's got history with Seth. Punk on screen brought Seth and Roman in as part of the Shield. And then you have Punk's history with Paul Heyman. And not to mention this favor that Paul Heyman owes him for Punk teaming up with the Bloodline at War Games. There's a lot that they have that they can pull from and use, and so I think they are slowly getting there, and I think it's going to continue. I think does it deserve to be the main event? No, I don't think so. If it does main event, I'm not going to be losing sleep over it, but I think this would be a real crummy way and the opposite of genuine, very forced, to give Punk a main event of WrestleMania in this manner. Punk on television, his character has brought up his desire to main event WrestleMania and be the champion, and he's lost that opportunity for 2 years in a row, so why would you put him in the main event with nothing on the line against two other guys in a non-title match? Now, it's not the first time something that's been non-title main evented a WrestleMania. Okay? And now with this 2-night format, you have plenty of options as to what could main event night 1 or night 2 of WrestleMania. We know night 2 is John Cena and Cody Rhodes. No argument there. That was determined when Cena turned heel and joined forces with The Rock. But the Punk, Roman, Seth thing, it's a good top of the card match, maybe second to last match on either night 1 or night 2. Hell, let's be daring here, and I'd put Roman, Seth, and Punk to open the show on either night 1 or night 2. Okay? Really start them off hot with the three of the biggest names in WWE opening up WrestleMania. If you don't want the last spot, you want the first spot in the card. And I think the match would be just as meaningful and important if they put it on first. I'm hoping that's where they go with it, because I still think that there's a possibility that whatever Punk's favor is with Heyman, that it's going to somehow tie into the John Cena Cody Rhodes championship match. Maybe it's a championship opportunity. That seems too obvious, but it's still a safe bet that maybe that's what Punk is looking for with Paul Heyman. That Paul Heyman can use his managerial stroke to get him a title shot, whether he gets inserted into Cody and Cena, or maybe he gets a title shot and he, Money in the Bank, cashes in on the winner of that championship match. Who knows? But I kind of have a feeling that there's the chance of something like that occurring, and then that would put Punk, Roman, and Rollins earlier in the card, whether that's on night 1 or night 2. Now, if it's on night 1, with the exception of the main event, it doesn't matter where you put Roman and Punk and Rollins. Now, if it's on night 2, I would open night 2 with that triple threat match. And if there's some sort of interaction that Punk and Heyman have a part of this Cena and Cody title match, you got enough room in between the beginning of the show and the end of the show to breathe before they make their appearance in the main event. Now, I say this because if you remember, 2 nights after John Cena turned heel and joined forces with The Rock at Elimination Chamber, CM Punk opened up Monday Night Raw with a fire promo and shared his thoughts about Rock and Cena aligning together, and Cena turning his back on all the fans. And so I feel like they could have just left that Easter egg there for us to remember and then come back to it at a later date, or it's got something to do with Punk being a part of that match. And I also say that because Punk said that it's not lost on him that he still wants his opportunity to main event WrestleMania, which could lead me to believe that somehow he's using this favor from Heyman to get shoehorned into the title match with Cena and Cody, which would be an interesting set of circumstances for WrestleMania. Now, what do I think should main event night one? I think Gunther and Jay would be a suitable night one main event, but I think it'll also be a suitable night one opener. I think main eventing night one of WrestleMania right now should go to the girls. Bianca Belair, Io Sky, and possibly Rhea Ripley, who's scheduled to meet Io on Raw this upcoming Monday, with Bianca as the special guest referee. I do have a feeling, though, that's somehow going to get turned into a triple threat match, which I'm not complaining about. And the reason why I say that the girls should main event, not because the girls haven't had a main event in a long time, but I think all three of those girls have really been the glue that has held the women's division together. And include Liv Morgan in that as well. Because she really has held her own in the last year and has really developed her character and has become a mainstay, a pillar, if you will, in the women's division in WWE on the main roster. Rhea, one of the most popular female stars in WWE, and maybe as time goes on, of all time. Io Sky has a cult-like following, an underground following with the fans, even though there's a language barrier. Being from Japan, and her English isn't so great when she cuts promos, her athletic ability has really caught on with the audience, and they get behind her a lot. And then you have Bianca Belair, who's kind of checks off all the boxes from when it comes to demographics with women's wrestling fans. Not to mention her performance in this Jade Cargill Naomi situation. She's done an excellent job, and I think there's a chance that if that match main events, if the women's match main events, then it's going to somehow tie into Jade and Naomi. I have a feeling they're going to book Jade and Naomi in a singles match at WrestleMania, which I think they should. But it's lingering, it's hanging over the heads that Bianca and Jade still have some unsettled issues over this attack from Naomi. And so I have a feeling that's going to kind of somehow that's going to be kind of intertwined with Bianca's match at WrestleMania. And it wouldn't surprise me if, let's say they did Jade and Naomi on night one and Naomi sneaks out the victory, or Naomi, let's say, back that up. Bianca, Io, and Rhea on night one main event. And Naomi helps Bianca without her knowledge. And Bianca becomes the women's champion. And then night two, you have Jade and Naomi. And Bianca had just won the belt the night before. You have that question mark in the air. Was Bianca part of this all along with Naomi? Why did Naomi help Bianca? And Bianca, did she really know about the help? And then maybe Bianca helps Naomi beat Jade, and look what you got there. You got this powerful alliance that set this whole thing up from day one so that Bianca could be the champion. I think there's a lot of room for that to grow. So as far as I'm concerned, I'd give the nod to the girls on night one just because they have done such a great job. And I think this story is interesting too. You know, Io beats Rhea. Bianca had some involvement. Rhea wants her title match any way she can. Now she's going to get it. Bianca's got to be the ref. If you go back and watch Elimination Chamber, after Bianca won the Chamber, Rhea came out to confront her at the end, and then Io showed up, and you had all three of them there, and the crowd popped big. People want to see the match, and I think that's the direction they're going in. Just the question is, should it main event? And I think right now it should. It's more interesting than what we're getting with Seth and Roman and Punk, and I'll die on that hill. Seth Roman and Punk has potential to be a huge WrestleMania match. There's a lot of meat to pull off that bone. But it's still early. And who knows? Maybe my mind will change in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And I'll want to see Seth, Roman, and Punk main event night 1 of WrestleMania. Who knows? So when it comes to the WrestleMania discussion, that's where I stand with all 3 of those topics. All right, let's get into it. WCW Nitro Spring Breakout 2000, March 27th from South Padre Island in Texas. You can find this episode on the Peacock in your WWE account, hub, whatever you want to call it. The show would open with Mean Gene Okerlund in the ring, who acknowledges a young lady who is proud of her assets, if you catch my drift. I would assume she flashed Gene sitting in the front row. You could kind of tell the camera cut to a different angle. So it was, it was pretty funny. The announcers chuckled on screen. And then Gene introduces someone who hasn't been in WCW for quite some time. And all of a sudden, Kimberly Page comes out, former Nitro girl and the wife of Diamond Dallas Page, who interrupts Mean Gene and introduces the return of the two-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion, Diamond Dallas Page. DDP comes out, diamond cutter, sign, all that good stuff. Mean Gene hypes up DDP's book and his upcoming appearance for the book signing. Page then talks about rehabbing his back injury, the Ready to Rumble movie premiere, and his quest to become the 3-time WCW champion, which then brings out Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett reminds Diamond Dallas Page that he's the only star in WCW and why he's the chosen one and why he will be the next WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Jarrett says he plans to be at the movie premiere to crash the party. Page says he's ready for Jarrett to feel the bang. Decent opening for Nitro. Hadn't seen DDP in a while on programming at that time. And, they're kind of keeping consistent with keeping Jarrett in the main event picture. So kind of a little foreshadowing is what's to come between those two. Tony Schiavone and Mark Madden run down the card, as we'll see Team Package, Ric Flair, and the Total Package Lex Luger take on Sting and Vampiro in a Texas Tornado Falls Count Anywhere match. Schiavone then announces that WCW President Brad Siegel has brought back Eric Bischoff to head up WCW Creative. He also reveals that Siegel's looking to bring Vince Russo back, who is still unsure if he wants to work with Eric Bischoff. Later in the evening, Schiavone announces a decision will be made regarding Russo's return to WCW. I guess this was interesting that they kind of broke the fourth wall, but at the same time, it also felt like a desperate attempt for them to get fans to tune into their product, kind of leaning into that internet wrestling smart mark type of crowd with all the backstage references that they used on camera. We see the artist formerly known as Prince Iaukea and Paisley looking for a new challenger for the cruiserweight titles. 3 nobodies, as Paisley put it, will be chosen to face him tonight. Air Paris, Mike Modest, and another random standing in front of them, waiting to be picked. Mike Modest would get the nod as he was infamous for being featured in the Beyond the Mat movie earlier in the year. He was the one that had the WWF tryout from the California independent wrestling promotion, and he did that. It's what Sheamus calls white noise, but it was the Kryptonite Crunch at the time, and nobody had seen that move. The scene in the Beyond the Mat movie, the guys backstage are watching it, and Cornette kind of cringes when Vince too, standing right there, cringes when they deliver the move, and I think it was one of the headbangers said, "I'm stealing that move." So that's what Mike Modest is most infamously known for. It's unfortunate because it got a lot of traction online, I remember as a kid, and I was kind of hoping that it would lead to something with him on television, and this was probably the closest thing that he got to it, being a part of WCW at this time. We see Scott Steiner, Jeff Jarrett, and the Harris brothers, the remaining members of the NWO, are poolside with the NWO girls. And then we get Mean Gene, who is with Booker T backstage, and he announces that their tag title match with Kidman against the Harris brothers is off due to an injury by one of the Harris brothers, so Booker T will now face the one that isn't injured. Get some, want some, better be big enough, bad enough to take some. Isn't that a Harlem Heat trademark? We get the artist and Mike Modest. Now, if Modest wins, he'll get a shot at the Cruiserweight Championship. At least that's how it was implied on commentary. His in-ring work is getting a good reaction from the crowd. That crowd felt like it was more Spring Breakers than it was wrestling fans. He had a few, but not a whole lot. But they were into what he was doing. The announcers hype up Russo's decision tonight. Madden speculates that he can't see Russo and Bischoff working together. This is clearly signs of the New Blood Millionaires Club storyline kind of rearing its, the early stages of it. It kind of implied that Russo and Bischoff were going to team together, and then as we all know, swerve, bro, they were aligned together on television, representing the New Blood against the Millionaires Club. Anyhow, Chris Candido arrives ringside to watch the match, as does Chavo Guerrero, who argues with Paisley. Modest would nail Chavo on the ring apron. Then Candido fights with Chavo on the outside. Paisley gets knocked off the ring apron from a distraction. Modest would then deliver the Kryptonite Crunch onto the artist for the win as Chavo chases off Candido. I'll be honest with you, this match wasn't bad. The announcers were really not paying a whole lot of attention to it, and they were more so hyping up this Russo-Bischoff possible, alliance, and it kind of took away from the match. The match really wasn't that bad. If it went, if you gave it a little bit more time, I think people would have really gotten into it. We then cut to Tony Schiavone at the announce desk, where he informs the audience that, WCW World Heavyweight Champion Sid Vicious has placed a $500,000 bounty on Hulk Hogan, stemming from the actions from the week before when Sid turned on Hogan randomly in a tag team match. That was WCW for you in 2000. Mean Gene's with the Harris Boys, and they cut a very Southern promo. Kind of felt very bland and boring about what one of them is going to do to Booker T. I don't think anybody wanted to see the Harris Boys in wrestling in general in 2000. The lack of reaction showed. We get clips of the spring break events with WCW talent and fans all week in South Padre Island. As I was watching that, I thought to myself, that would be something that WWE should kind of capitalize on, or even AEW. It would be kind of neat if they, did something on the beach or, in like a spring break town or whatever, Daytona, Lake Havasu, hell, even go back to South Padre Island in Texas. I mean, that would be kind of neat. I'd like to see something like that take place during spring break time, with the sand and the water, and I don't know. I just feel like cosmetically it would make the show more interesting. I mean, this show sucked. I'm just going to be straight up with you all. This show fucking sucked from a bell-to-bell content standpoint. But I watched it because I'm a big outdoor wrestling event kind of guy. And I like those outdoor wrestling events, those stadium shows, and they have like the real intimate kind of unique feel to them. And this still had that, despite the action and the storylines and the programming sucking a big fat one. So yeah, hopefully WWE or even AEW does something like this in the near future. Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart arrive to the hotel, but they're stopped by Vampiro, who says he needs to talk to them as they go into the commercial break. We come back from the break, and it's Booker, not T, against Big Ron Harris. We get more talk by the announcers of the Russo and Bischoff returns. A lot of behind-the-scenes talk, breaking the fourth wall. That was the thing that I didn't really care for. Back then, I thought it was kind of cool, at 17 years old. But, I'm 42 now, and I'm watching this. I'm like, how do you want me to suspend my disbelief and get into the characters of this programming when you're basically telling us that all this shit is fake and it's not real, by using these creative terms and the head of creative and writing the storylines? Like, come on. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, they went way past the fourth wall. They broke down the fifth wall, in my opinion. Or maybe even the sixth. It was funny. Ron Harris rocking the jorts long before John Cena. I guess they were kind of going with the spring break theme. Wearing more comfortable outdoor summer clothing. Booker would deliver an axe kick as Jeff Jarrett runs down to distract the referee. Don Harris, who was allegedly the injured brother, runs in. And him and Ron give Booker T their H-bomb finisher. The referee then turns around, makes the count for the win. Post-match, we get Harlem Heat 2000, Hardly running down to the ring to pounce on Booker. Kidman would then make the save, fight him off, but the numbers get the best of him. until Booker chases them all off with a chair. Once again, nobody cared about the Harris twins, and this match was way too short. Backstage, we get Vampiro talking with Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart regarding the bounty that's been placed on Hogan's head as they head into commercial. We come back from the break, and Mean Gene's in the ring to introduce Hulk Hogan to discuss this bounty that Sid has put on him. Hogan says nobody is collecting on the bounty. He calls out Sid and says that every time him and Sid are set to meet, Sid ducks tail. Hogan says he will wait till Sid shows up and bring his own $500,000. The crowd then starts chanting for Hogan, so they're kind of into Hogan. I mean, he's obviously the most recognizable name on the show. If you weren't a wrestling fan and you were at this show, you knew who Hulk Hogan was. Hogan would then ramble on about Vampiro being the wrestler of the future, says he's got his back. If anyone messes with him, Hogan puts Vampiro over pretty hard and compares him to how Hulk was during the early Hulkamania days, which they're fucking grasping at straws here at this point. I mean, come on. I get it that they were trying to elevate this young star at the time, but man, like, come on, there was no Vampiro Mania. Fans weren't clamoring for Vampiro. He had a small, strong following for those that watched, but this wasn't Hulkamania. Come on. I mean, this was a stretch, dude. A huge stretch. But I get it. They were trying to put some instant credibility on Vampiro. Hogan would call out Sid again. Sid doesn't show up, but the Wall's music hits as we got a shot of the Wall on the roof of the hotel. And Hogan says, "That's the Wall, brother! That's the Wall!" In a very unconvincing, frantic voice. Then Hogan puts another $500,000 down of his own money on the match as the Wall disappears. I'll be honest with you, this promo, too much rambling from Hogan. I don't know if they were stalling because the Wall wasn't in position on the hotel rooftop yet. I'm not sure, but too much rambling. It could have just been short and sweet. Hogan could have put his own money up. Hogan could have said, "Hey, brother, whoever wants it, I'm here. Come get it." Boom. Wall shows up. He's standing on the roof. Challenge accepted. Done deal. And the other thing, too, that I noticed on this show, Sid wasn't on it. Sid puts this bounty on Hogan, but he wasn't on the show. So was it the beginning of softball season? Did he miss the show because he had to take part in opening day? I don't know. But it would have been nice if Sid had an appearance on the show to kind of, and not to mention the Sid Vicious character, it never struck me as him being the type of character that he needed someone to do his bidding for him. He was always the one that just kind of got the business done for himself. So I have a feeling that maybe Sid couldn't make this show, or it was a last minute story that they just kind of threw in there that like Sid put a bounty on Hogan's head just so that they can kind of keep the thread going for this Sid Hogan feud that eventually didn't happen. And I'll get to that shortly. But yeah, this segment, Hogan rambled on too long. Backstage, Mike Tenay is with the Disco Inferno and the Mamalukes. Big Vito's not happy with Disco about being in this match with the Young Dragons because the Mamalukes want their tag team title shot from the Harris Boys, who are watching on the monitor backstage. We come back from the commercial break, and it's the Young Dragons dressed up as 3 Count as the match gets right underway with the Mamalukes and Disco Inferno jumping them from behind. And then it's during this match, breaking news. Tony Schiavone reveals that Vince Russo has agreed to work with Eric Bischoff and return to WCW on the creative team. This match, nothing to write home about, kind of all over the place. Very sloppy at times, missing spots, and just kind of felt like they were rushing some of the moves. The Harris brothers would then arrive, because I guess we need more of Ron and Don Harris on this show, and attack the Mamalukes, leaving Disco to fend for himself with the Young Dragons. When the finish comes, and we see the Dragons deliver a top rope splash to Disco for the win. Post-match, the Harris brothers attack the Dragons with a double H-bomb. Again, nobody cared. That Spring Break crowd did not care. The main focus was the announcement of Vince Russo returning to WCW. And to be quite honest with you, if you wanted to make somewhat of an impact, you could have just made that announcement to the live crowd. Mean Gene could have, they could have brought out a member, of WCW management to make the announcement that Russo and Bischoff were agreeing to work together. Because who knows if that audience in South Padre Island knew what was going on. I mean, the audience at home did, but maybe they knew nobody was going to give a shit about that announcement, and that's why they did it, for just the TV crowd. I don't know. Team Package and Sting and Vampiro are shown separately heading to the ring, going to the commercial break for this next match, which is the Texas Tornado Falls Count Anywhere match. Those face-painted fellas, Sting and Vampiro, jump Flair and Luger from behind during their entrances. This was a fun little brawl that kind of complemented their surroundings of the hotel pool and beach area. Sting and Luger very quickly make their way to the pool, where Sting back body drops Luger into the pool. That gets a good reaction from the crowd. So they were watching. It was on the screen, so they got to see that. Flair and Vampiro kept the action in the ring. Miss Elizabeth would throw chips and dip on the Sting, who then throws salsa and sour cream on the Luger over by that pool food buffet bar area, which then leads them to the beach, where they're fighting all over the sand as they make their way into the ocean in South Padre Island, Texas. Shivani still, and this was baffling to me, Shivani still plugging Russo and Bischoff working together as these guys are beating the shit out of each other on the beach. Call the action. Maybe the viewers at home want to know what's going on, instead of hearing about Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff, which we've already heard about 5 times before in the show. Wasn't needed for this segment. You could have dedicated your own segment to that. Luger would go for a clothesline to Sting, who ducks, and then back body drops Luger into the ocean, followed by a pile driver into the water onto Lex for the win. Sting and Vampiro are your winners. This was a fun little match, but this probably could have used more time. I would have put this on as the main event, to be quite honest with you. If they gave it a little more time, didn't feel like it was rushed, I think it would be appreciated more. The match itself. Backstage, Booker T is approached by a cameraman asking him about the returns of Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo. He says, talk to the ass kissers in the back, because he has never done any of that in WCW. Then he looks directly into the camera and tells Russo and Bischoff that they need to do their jobs. I thought, even though it kind of annoyed me that the announcers were taking away from the action by discussing this Russo Bischoff return, I thought that the backstage segments of asking the talent their reaction to these guys coming back was a nice touch, and definitely a good way to keep that thread into the show, as opposed to Shivani and Mark Madden pretty much not calling the action at all in several of these matches. Next up, we get Mean Gene backstage with Terry Funk to discuss his match with Hugh Morris. If you want to see something, you want to see a train wreck, watch this interview, because Funk and Gene look like they both had a few soda pops at the pool bar before they filmed this. Next up, we get Ming taking on La Parka, who's still doing that cheesy karate movie dubbed over audio gimmick to zero reaction from the crowd. The commentary finally questions if that's really his voice or someone dubbed over it. I think it sounded like Ed Ferrara, who was Vince Russo's right-hand man on the writing team at that time. Ming had enough, and he went after La Parka to kick the match off. The referee got nailed during the melee, blinding him. La Parka would use a chair to nail Ming in the head, but it was unsuccessful. Ming then would deliver the Tongan death grip for the win, after the referee, kind of woke up from his chair shot coma, or his elbow head to the head coma. I don't know what it was. Tank Abbott arrives ringside, and Fit Finlay would jump him from behind, with WCW security breaking things up. So it looked like they were kind of going to go the Tank Abbott, Meng, Fit Finlay route before this Bischoff-Russo reboot, which would have been, those probably would have been some fun train wreck style matches with these guys just beating the dog shit out of each other. But at the same time, the Meng La Parka match, this wasn't really needed for this show. Like a lot of things that wasn't needed for this show. They could have dedicated more time to that tornado tag, that, in my opinion, instead of putting this in. But the post-match thing kind of intrigued me a little bit with Tank arriving. The Kid Cam, which is Billy Kidman's camera, catches the NWO, Jeff Jarrett, Steiner, and the Harris boys and the NWO girls by the pool from earlier in the day, which was the clip we saw earlier in the show. But now we have a different point of view, being the kid cam. Then we get a shot of Buff Bagwell arriving after those guys leave, talking to the girls at the pool, who says he wants to dry them off top to bottom. Oh, hey now. The camera then shows the NWO watching that footage backstage. And then Fit Finlay is asked about the return of Russo and Bischoff, and he says he's a team player in WCW and he will back them up. We get a video montage to build up the wall for his showdown with Hulk Hogan later on in the show, followed by Hugh Morris and Terry Funk. Shivani then, on commentary, announces that next week there will not be a live episode of Nitro, but they will air a Best of Nitro recap. So, basically, this is our best stuff because what we're showing you sucks. And when we return in 2 weeks, hopefully our programming will be better and you'll watch it again. Shivani says that Russo and Bischoff will take 2 weeks to sort things out and they will return live on Nitro April the 10th, 2000 from Denver, Colorado. Again, talking over this match, but you know what? I was okay with that because there was nothing memorable about this match except for the spot where we saw Hugh Morris powerbomb Terry Funk onto the sand outside the platform at ringside. Funk then would nail Morris in the head with a chair, followed by Dustin Rhodes arriving to attack Terry Funk, but he eats a chair shot to the head. Hugh Morris then comes back to attack Funk from behind, drags him back into the ring to deliver a top rope moonsault called the No Laughing Matter, but Dustin Rhodes jumps in to cause the disqualification. He then nails the referee with a chair shot, then puts some work onto Funk, not until Hugh Morris goes after Dustin, and then Funk goes after Dustin as they fight their way up the ramp. Hugh Morris would grab the referee and randomly deliver a No Laughing Matter moonsault to him. I guess the finish and the post-match stuff was probably the most memorable stuff because everything else before that I didn't really care about, and neither did the announcers because they talked over it. We see Jeff Jarrett and Big Papa Pump head to the ring for their next match. Coming back from the commercial break, Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart are backstage with Mean Genius. We just had a Hulk Hogan promo. Why do we need another one? I love Hulk, but man, laying it on thick, dude. In his promo, he managed to mention his match with the Wall, Vampiro being the future of the business, Sid's bounty, and the NWO all rolled into one. It was quite the mouthful of a promo. I mean, he mentioned all of that with the exception of the NWO in the in-ring promo to set up the main event. But I guess we needed another shot of Hogan. Then we get a backstage shot of Curt Hennig telling Buff Bagwell to keep his head in the game for their tag team match. Followed by the Artist, formerly known as Prince Iaukea, asked about the returns of Russo and Bischoff, where he says that they both will run the company into the ground, and then he chuckles and says, the boys in the back told me to say that. But then he gives Russo some credit for giving him an opportunity when Russo was in WCW previously, and he praised Bischoff for doing great things with the company before, and he's very optimistic about the company's future with their returns. Tag team match, Jeff Jarrett and Big Papa Pump representing the dying version of this NWO to take on Curt Hennig and Buff Bagwell. Now, there is no announcement whatsoever that Hennig and Bagwell are going to face Jarrett and Steiner on this show, okay? And there's no tie-in or any reason on this show as to why Hennig is Bagwell's partner. Just kind of randomly thrown together, and people expected us to play along with it. Hennig doesn't waste any time getting into it with them as Buff makes his entrance at the start of the match, kind of leaving him behind. Once again, the announcers are hyping up Russo and Bischoff's return. I guess we can't blame them for trying to be consistent. Closing moments of this match saw Hennig go for his Henningplex onto Scott Steiner, but Jeff Jarrett would nail him with a guitar shot to the head. Buff is on the outside being checked on by the NWO girls as Scott Steiner puts Hennig in the Steiner recliner for the win. A nothing match. It felt rushed. Could have been better. Could have had an explanation as to why Curt Hennig was Buff's partner. No hype whatsoever. It is what it is. Backstage, Big Vito talks about WCW going in the right direction with the returns of Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff. And then we've reached our main event. It's the Wall and Hulk Hogan in a typical Hogan big man match where Hogan fights from underneath and this monster is going to kill him. Yeah, if you've seen one Hogan big man match, you've seen them all. I mean, and they drew a lot of money over the years. Andre, Bundy, Big John Studd, Kamala, One Man Gang, Big Boss Man, you name it. Hogan worked with all the big guys. But this was 2000, and I think Hogan's shtick had gotten old at that point. Hogan would no-sell a wall from the no-sell a chokeslam from the wall. Then the wall would no-sell a Hulk Hogan leg drop. The finish would come when Vampiro attacks the wall for the disqualification. Hulk and Vampiro would then put the wall through a table on the outside. But he gets up because he's the wall, brother. Vampiro and Hogan would then fend him off with steel chairs to close the show. Pretty boring main event, I will say. And the fact that the announcers were like overselling the importance of this match, it made it less important for me to even care about. They spent more time this show hyping up the Russo-Bischoff reboot. This was essentially a throwaway show. So if you want to see a bad Nitro, this is one of them. March 27th, 2000. All right, that does it for this episode of Kicking Out at 2. Thank you all so very much for pressing play, hitting download, liking, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast. Up next in the next few weeks, WrestleMania content. That's right, we are on the march to WrestleMania. And Justin and I are going to be recording some stuff for you very shortly. I'll be recapping WrestleMania 6 as voted by all of you in the polls, so be on the lookout for that, as well as I'll probably run down the entire WrestleMania card and give you my picks, as well as, all the other WrestleMania weekend happenings that I'll share my thoughts on in the next couple of weeks. So with that being said, I think it's about that time that we put this one officially down for the 3 count, thank God. And we'll see y'all next time.